Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and journalists and editors and people putting stuff out in the news. And that's the way you can get the insight and the inside on what's going on. And in our second segment, we do artists and performers, and we have a wonderful, legendary Bronx photographer going to be on the show in the second segment. But now let's do the first segment and say good evening to Patrick Spauster, who is a freelance reporter, and what caught my eye was a couple of pieces on city limits. Nice to see you, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Just since we haven't had you on the program before, so your background is are you from here? Are you from somewhere else? Just tell us how you got into this nasty game of journalism.
Yeah, I'm a journalist that focuses on housing and homelessness. I actually went to NYU to get an urban planning degree, and I have a background in research, but found myself really liking digging into storytelling about what's going on in the city with housing and homelessness, which is such a crucial and evolving issue. And in particular, I've been focusing a lot on the role that data can play in journalism and telling those stories, how to get some hard to get data, analyze it, and figure out what the data says about what's going on in our city and what's important.
But before we get into something that I have expressed to you, I thought was fascinating. Why housing and homelessness? In other words, there are many reporters who'll cover anything they're asked to, and they'll get into this or that or the other. But you have expressed this is your thing.
Part of that is due to my background in researching housing and what I feel is like a really important issue. But I also think that it's a crucial area for using data to express important themes about what's going on in our city. So more of our policymakers are using data in their decision making. Companies, real estate, other actors like the government are all using data and analytics to power how they operate. And I think there's a crucial role for journalism there to keep it accountable. And it's crucial to have journalism that empowers people to understand data and how it's being used. And that's kind of the case for this project.
That is absolutely fascinating because with homelessness, as with many other issues, everybody's got an opinion. We all see homeless people all around us. We may know people, etc. We may be those people. And this is a way of saying, wait a minute, if you believe that, here's the information. All right. So you wrote this really fascinating story. And I'm going to, it was Exit Unknown. Where do people go after leaving New York City homeless shelters? The analogy I make is that all through Kentucky and Tennessee and Louisiana, we're getting tornadoes and floods and storms, and we see these terrible, absolutely horrible videos of towns being leveled and people standing there going, oh my goodness, and I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying it's just absolutely horrible to see. Where are all those people now? What happened to them, especially in states that don't have big social nets to catch people? New York has its own issues, but not that. We really do have some, social programs. What happens to them? So your question is, when Mayor Adams says, there's a limit to your stay in the shelter, where do they go? That's my introduction. So here's the question: where do they go?
Yeah,
help. Where are they?
and digging into this, I really we don't know nearly as much as we could, or some say as we should, about where people go when they leave shelter. It kind of starts with in 2022, the city council passed a law requiring that the city overhaul the way they report data on homelessness. And as a result of that, the city has been putting out new counts that show, by our count, at city limits that we created, 147,000 people in the most recent count that are living in New York City homeless shelters right now, which is a staggering number. That's
staggering number.
Greater than the population of Syracuse, New York, for example.
And let me just mention, it's not only New York. I saw a story on the network news last night about Los Angeles with like 150,000. So I realized I'm not minimizing New York's problem, but this is a nationwide problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Certainly. And I think what was really revealing about this is what we don't know about where people go is just as telling about what's going on with homelessness as what we do know. So, for example, I found that over half, or 55% of the households that exited a Department of Homeless Services shelter in the past 11 months or so, we don't know where they get. That's the exit that gets flagged unknown in the data. That's so more than half of those households, we don't know where they're going. And that was part of the reporting requirements under this city council law, was to try and get a better sense for what's going on. And so this data has just started to come out, and we're trying to capture what's going on. So to give it a little perspective, that's the number of people that are exiting each month from DHS shelters is approximately 10% of the monthly population. Mm-hmm. And then that means just 2% of those that are in DHS shelters are exiting to some sort of permanent housing, right? Because most of the folks that are exiting, we don't know where they go.
So when we talk about the correction system, and obviously the shelter system is not a correction system, but we still want to have people, quote unquote, rehabilitated so that their lives are stronger. Certainly they're getting a place to stay. We understand that, but it would be nice to have them move. Okay, I've been through this. I know how to do it. I know what my problems with my family are. Obviously they're financial. Maybe it's job development. Maybe it's workforce development. Maybe it's health. It could be mental illness. I mean, the range of things. But we just put them back out. It is really what the numbers are showing us.
Right. So I want to make an important distinction that we're not the DHS shelters. Not everyone is getting a like what's it been like called like a shelter eviction notice or a limit on a shelter stay. Many of these exits are voluntary exits. Shelters can just be a really hard place for people to live. They're not, especially large congregate shelters. Folks that I talked to for this story were talking about how it can be unpleasant and how hard it is to navigate. But also it creates kind of all sorts of mobility within the system where folks are leaving for various reasons. Like you mentioned, like they are exiting for, maybe they're trying to reconnect with family and doubling up with their family. Maybe they have to leave to go to the hospital. Sometimes they're ending up on the street. But what I talk to advocates about this issue is they suggest that these folks that are exiting unknown, it's more likely that they're kind of staying homeless and staying in the system than it is that they're finding a permanent place to stay. But there is a lot that we don't know.
You and me are an interesting pair to talk about these, because I am not a data person. And so you can provide the data for my crazy ideas. If the two of us sat together, just you and me, and said, how should we design a program so when they get out, they move to some more permanent housing, we would, if all things being equal, we would provide the kind of social service that would, quote unquote, rehabilitate them financially or all the other issues that we said, and create a way to do that. And then say, okay, your stay is up, or maybe the families just say, we can't take it. There could be danger in the shelters. I mean, we know what's in there. And then when they move out, there's something to get to. And of course, on the back end is the whole, I hate to use the word, affordable housing problem, because you and I could rehabilitate them, but not have a place for them to go. We need to do that at the same time. So now that we've just designed, and you could do all the numbers, now you and I have just designed a program.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that we do know a lot of the things that work. It's just a matter of finding the resources to make it happen. So those families that do exit to permanent housing, the majority of them are exiting to using a housing voucher to find a place to live. Often through the city's called City FEPS program, to use a housing voucher. Right. And we simply just don't have enough housing vouchers for the need, especially since we have our growing homelessness population. And then also it's just really challenging to use a voucher. One of the folks I talked to for this story, Starlight, described it being first challenging to get the housing voucher in the first place, but even harder to use it. She described it as a full-time job, looking around the city to try and find brokers and landlords that would take a housing voucher, because there's often discrimination against folks using vouchers because of stereotypes about what kind of renters.
Well, that's number one. And on the other hand, there's also people who would like to use developers would like to use it because it's a cheap way of just bringing in people and have the city pay for it, and they're happy to just do that. But of course, there are neighbors. I mean, I'm just describing something that we all know. You said that one of the problems obviously is resources. Do you think it's high or low on this on the mayor's priority scale? I mean, he knows it's one of his issues, and you probably can't answer that question, but I'm curious.
I can't exactly. I mean, in talking to DHS for the story, one thing that what's crazy is that actually the placements with housing vouchers, for example, are actually up year to year. If you look at the numbers, like more people this year have gotten housing vouchers and moved into housing than they did last year. The issue is that the need is growing. And the exits are not able to keep up with the swelling population. So it's kind of an inadequate release valve on this homelessness.
Yeah, that's true. And then, of course, you've got to evaluate what it is that causes homelessness. I'm curious about this because it's become such a big issue, and the mayor has been, on I don't want to say on all sides of it, but he's been reviewed positively and negatively about it. Is the migrant population seen as kind of lumped into all of this, or are they viewed by the city in a different way, which really, in many ways, there's so much commonality between your traditional homeless people and migrant people who've just come here with no home. I mean,
Yeah. I think this is a really important information gap that I think the reporting that we've done at City Limits has really made progress on filling. For example, the city didn't used to report the number of people in all the different agency shelters. And for example, only at the end of last summer did they begin reporting the number of people that were staying in kind of the temporary emergency shelters that were going up around the city where a lot of migrant families are staying. But there are still some important gaps in the data here. For example, we don't actually get exit data for those temporary shelters. So that's an even bigger mystery. So we're really just using the piece of the puzzle to keep building on this. And I have hopes that someday this information will be available for more types of shelters, and that it'll be in an accessible format that people can use.
So in that way, the fact that you don't get the data for those folks, that is a split of some sort in how the city is handling it, because that information, well, we're so busy dealing with this, we're not going to add in however many we took in. Listen, Patrick Spauster from City Limits, thank you so much. This is it's very informative. It's very important that you write what you write, because we all see people who need help in our streets. And so we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Spauster, a freelance reporter, has a lot of stuff on City Limits about this very issue. We appreciate your time. Now we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll do a wonderful Bronx photographer. Don't go away.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. .55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. 34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. This is going to be fun because this gentleman is a good friend of mine, I'm proud to say, but he's also a wonderful photographer. My buddy, Edwin Pagan. Nice to see you, Edwin.
How are you, Gary?
Edwin literally is at Lehman College. You can see the field behind him, and so we appreciate your sitting on a park bench chatting with us. Edwin, I mean, listen, man, I could go through your resume, but I guess the easiest thing is to say you are part of Seis del Sur, 6 photographers who took pictures of the South Bronx.
That's right.
So why don't you tell me about what you got coming up? It's called Los Inocentes. Is my Jewish Spanish okay
No,
on that?
that's correct. Los Inocentes, which means the innocents, and basically it's a show that's 35 years in the making, because a lot of it is from another era. It's from 2000s and also most of it from the 90s. And the show only accommodated 13 images, but there are hundreds of them. And I was excited when I got the word back from Photoville earlier in the year that my application to kind of showcase this series was accepted. And so I'm representing the Bronx as part of 82 showcases around the city, most of them happening in Dumbo and their main location, but there's 2 in the Bronx. One is the one that I'm doing, which is up on 241st and Broadway in Van Cortlandt Park. And the Point CDC also has an installation as well.
And I have to say, walking by on Broadway near Van Cortlandt Park, which is what I did, and I was like, wait a minute, I know those photographs. So there's a lot of visibility here. What do you think when you walk by, let's say you walk by Broadway near Van Cortlandt Park and you see the images, what does it make you think? I mean, I'm sure there's pride in your work, and we're going to show some here, by the way.
Yeah, it's a little surreal because when you do photography, the same as when you do poetry and some of these sort of more insular arts that you do alone, you kind of live with the images for a while, whether it's on negative and then printing them, and now digital, watching them on a screen on your computer. Right. But whenever you see them displayed in a gallery, it's always, the novelty doesn't wear off. And then in this case, the way Photoville does it, they print them on vinyl, and they're big as life on a fence in a park that I love. It's a little surreal, and it's exciting to me. One
of the things that I find, for example, if I go out to the community or go to a community event, like here, I don't see the audience and I don't get the feedback from people. And for you, I'm assuming it's similar. You take all these pictures, you have hundreds of them, you've looked at them over and over again, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you put them up and somebody says, wow, that means something to me, I'm sure that's motivating. Let's put it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Can we show a couple? Anderson has the magic box. Let's see if we can put something up. Just let her rip. Here you go. Want to tell us what this is?
This was near the Melrose houses in the Bronx. This is in the early 90s when they were doing a lot of AIDS activism work. And some artists, young artists had gotten together there with the NYCHA housing, and they were teaching these kids about what was going on in their community.
Wow.
And also having them sort of participate by making these signs. And I kind of like this photo because I took a lot that day of that event, but there's this one young man who obviously realizes I'm not part of the group, and he's pointing at me like,
oh, he's the one.
Stranger.
I don't know, Anderson, could we just put that picture up there again?
And it was like, yeah, like stranger danger, like you don't.
Oh, there you go. You know what I like about this is here are the kids in the Bronx doing whatever they're doing. And in this case, very healthy. They're creating. I mean, it's just, it's exactly what we want our kids to be doing. But in the background, there's always this looming issue, whether it be AIDS, whether it be, the crack epidemic. I mean, we know about health, all the health epidemics we've had. Exactly. And so it's iconic, even though it's really, quote unquote, an ordinary photograph. Very, very, very nice.
Right.
So I get it, Edwin. That's why we've been friends a long time. All right, let's see what the next one is. Here's a little handball in the park, right?
Yep, handball in the park, and it's also pinned against the handball court, which has Lisa, rest in peace. And this young lady also was a young victim who died around that time, died in 1990 of AIDS complicated condition, obviously passed on either through, I think it was through a blood transfusion.
Wow.
And the graffiti writers in the area did this sort of mural to her. And when I found out in the newspapers that it was up, I went, and that's near Prospect Park.
I was going to ask you what park it was. But again, gee whiz, after two photos, we've got a nice theme going. Here's a guy playing handball, but what looms around him, and those of us in the Bronx who know what looms around us all the time, because there are issues that we stand strong on and fight for, et cetera, and that captured it. All right, numero tres, third picture. Same kind of thing. Go ahead.
Exactly. This was a protest that they were doing by the Bronx Clean Air Coalition to sort of protest the Lebanon incinerator that was
yes,
Haven. And they eventually shut it down, but this is like an event that they went through the streets. There were hundreds of people. And out of the shots that I took, I love this one again because it's symbolic. And the mother and grandmother had the kid's mask. Obviously, it's not plugged in as they're walking, but it's symbolic. And then in the background, there's someone carrying a casket.
Anderson, pop that up again. I want to see all that. Oh, yes, he's carrying a casket. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Now, was this kind of staged, or can we presume this child had some airborne issues?
No, the young man did suffer from asthma, but his grandmother and mother brought his inhaler
to make the show. And again, it's the same kind of thing. Now, so they were part of a protest.
Exactly.
When you go out to shoot, like are you looking for something iconic like this that we've underscored, or are you've been around long enough and you're good enough and your eye is good enough, so you just kind of end up taking a million pictures and now you say, oh, well, this one works.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this case, in the case of the march, I knew it was happening. Richie Perez, which was one of the organizers, had told us that it was happening, and I went knowing that there would be good material there. But you kind of look at what's going on and you learn to sort of kind of get in front of people and get the shot and get out of their way. But in some instances, what I used to do a lot in the mid to like sort of 1990, 1992 was that I just used to walk around the Bronx. And I would just come across things a lot of times, especially in the summer. There's always something going on in the summer. And there was always something to document.
And you always had your camera with you?
Always.
Okay, bad question. Do you have it with you now?
Excuse me?
Do you have it with you now?
Oh, it never
leaves. Oh, there it is. All right. Just in case something comes along. All right, we got a couple more, I think, right?
Yep.
Now this I've seen before. This is so iconic that it's kind of mind blowing. Looks to me a little earlier than the 90s.
Yeah, this was like 87. This is I call it Jumping Jacks, and it's on Southern Boulevard when you're getting near Simpson Street. An empty lot. I was doing one of my summer journeys, just walking through the neighborhood. This was like in the late fall. And I came across these kids and I went in through the hole in the fence that they had cut. And they were just...
that's a Bronx story in and of itself. Believe me, I've been through many of those holes.
Yeah. And I used to do that myself. We used to stack up mattresses.
Oh, do that.
And just jump from windows of abandoned buildings And that was one of the things. We didn't have the resources or the playgrounds. Maybe the swings were rusted brown because.
So you made your own fun. I mean, that really is the bottom line. The other thing about that picture, they say, well, the Bronx is burning. The Bronx had already burned, and this was
Right.
after that fact.
Right. This was then. Now the kids being resilient.
Right. Tremendous. All right, we got one more picture, and then we want to mention to people where they can see it. And also, you're going to be doing an artist talk, so we're going to do that as well. So let's do one more photo. Oh, here we are. Let me guess. 3 Kings Day.
3 Kings Day.
You want to say anything about it, or is it just plainly obvious these kids were?
Yeah, that was an event that went on that was being done by the school district in Mott Haven and in Melrose, and it started at Ostos. All the kids gathered at the old building at Ostos, and then it went through across 149th. It went through the hub, back around, and back to the schools. It was nice. The kids had a really good time.
Edwin, before we run out of time, so now you're doing an artist talk. You're going to, in a way, have similar discussion to what we're doing right now.
That's right. Well, there's an official opening.
The opening first, right?
Even though the work is up already, we're doing a little formal kind of gathering on Saturday, June 15th, starting at 4 p.m. We'll have some hors d'oeuvres and snacks, and people, they can ask me questions then. But then in July 11th at 7 p.m., we're having an artist talk at the Van Cortlandt Museum, which should be good. It's always good to have people look at the work in a better situation. And also,
what I really like, Edwin, about them is in part what we have talked about, and that is, especially for young people, learn a little bit about where you're from, learn a little bit about our fascinating history, and the pictures that we talked about that show ordinary events with some cloud or something in the background. That is just tremendous work. Listen, I didn't give you the proper introduction, so I'm going to do the introduction at the end. Edwin Pagan is a Bronx-based multidisciplinary artist whose work centers around photography, filmmaking, sound, and graphic design. A lot of people know that he is the Latin horror film guy, and also a ace photographer. As you can see, he's got you never know what he's going to see today, and also maybe best of all for me, one of my buddies. So Edwin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you around town. We got a lot to work on, a lot to do, and we appreciate your time in the Bronx Buzz.
Absolutely. And as I always say to people, just so that they know that no Bronxites were hurt in the making of my art.
There you go. Especially now that there's digital technology, you didn't have to go and run the film through the liquids. Anyway, that's it. Listen, we want to thank Patrick Spauster from the City Limits, who joined us earlier in the program. And that's it for the Bronx Buzz. And you know what we say: if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, we'll be back next week. Good night.